Hello, my name is Anthony Thompson, and in this walkthrough, I'll be demonstrating a basic penetration test against the basic Pentesting 1 vulnerable machine from Ball and Hub. This demonstration is intended strictly for educational and legal lab practice purposes only. The objective is to walk through the standard penetration testing methodology, including host discovery, enumeration, exploitation, and post-exploitation verification on a deliberately vulnerable system. I would also like to give a special thank you to Dr. Wesley Phillips, who taught me the tools, techniques, and methodology used throughout this walkthrough. Before beginning the penetration test, I must first identify the IP address of my attacking machine, which is my Kali Linux machine. This IP address will later be used as my local host or L host during exploitation. At this point, I have run the following command IPA to identify the IP address of my Kali Linux machine. As you can see highlighted here, I can identify the IP address of my Kali Linux machine as 192.168.1.63. Now that I have identified the IP address of my Kali Linux machine, I can now begin the first phase of my penetration test, which is host discovery. During this step, I will identify live systems on a local network, and to do this, I will use the following command: sudo net discover. After reviewing the recently discovered IP addresses and MAC addresses, I can line up that the MAC address of my targeting machine is this one right here, and this lines up with the IP address 192.168.1.36. Using this command, I was able to identify the IP address of the machine that I will be targeting. Now that I have identified the target IP address that I will be attacking, I can now verify if that host is reachable by using the command fping with the IP address of my target machine, which is 192.168.1.36. By inputting that command, I can now see that the IP address of the machine that I will be attacking is alive. After verifying that the target is alive, I can now move into the port scanning phase. The goal of this phase is to identify open ports and exposed services on the target system. I can first begin with a basic nmap scan of the target system. That command will be as follows: nmap with the following IP address of the machine I will be attacking. As we can see, there are 997 closed ports, but also there are 3 open ports. The first one being the file transfer port, the second one being the SSH port, and the third one being the website port. Now, to further my knowledge of these ports, I can run a service version scan of this. Next, I ran a service version scan of this nmap to gain additional details. As you can see here, it has also given us possible exploits for each open port service for this target system. From this nmap scan results, I observed that port 21 is open and running ProFTPD version 1.3.3c. Identifying this service version is critical, as it allows me to research known vulnerabilities associated with that specific software. At this stage, I can now research known vulnerabilities for the identified service ProFTPD 1.3.3c using the following command: search exploit ProFTPD 1.3.3c. The results of this command indicate a known backdoor vulnerability in ProFTPD version 1.3.3c, which allows remote command execution. This vulnerability will be used in the exploitation phase of my basic penetration test. With my known vulnerability now identified, I can move on to the exploitation phase using the Metasploit framework. I can launch Metasploit with the following command: msf console. Now that my Metasploit console has loaded, I can use the appropriate exploit module for this exploit, which would be use exploit /unix /ftp /pro ftpd underscore 133c underscore backdoor. Next, I now have to configure the required options for this specific exploit. First, I can start with setting my rhost. Now that my rhost is set to my target IP address, I can now set my lhost to my Kali IP address. Now that my lhost are set to my Kali IP address, I can now set my lport as the final. Now that my lhost is set to my Kali IP address, I can now set my lport. Now that my chost and cport are set, I can now set my payload. My payload will be set as cmd/unix/reverse. Next, before running my exploit, I will make sure to verify all my options so that they are correct when I run my exploit. After running the command options, I can see the following options for this exploit are as I inputted and correct. Now that I identified all my options are correct, I can now input the command run into my exploit to run my exploit. After running the exploit, now that I have accessed my exploit and the command shell session 1 is open, I ran the command who am I to identify that I now have root access on this target system. I also ran the command ID to further verify that I have compromised this system and have gained root access. Further verifying and completing this compromise, I ran this command ls to identify the list of commands I can run on this target system. In conclusion, the basic Pentesting 1 target system was successfully compromised. Root access was obtained without authentication, and full control of the system was obtained. This demonstrates the serious risks posed by outdated and vulnerable versions, such as Pro FTPD version 1.3.3c used as an example in this walkthrough. When left unpatched, these systems can be exploited through basic penetration testing. Thank you again to Dr. Wesley Phillips for the instruction and guidance that made this walkthrough possible, and thank you for watching.